Episode 1 of The Mandalorian Season 3 had some really cool space scenes, and as this show continues, as Season 3 progresses, on this channel we're going to break down pretty much everything related to spaceships or space combat. We'll be starting this new series today with a look at some of the ships featured in Season 3 Episode 1, specifically the pirate starfighter and the very interesting pirate ship we see at the very end. Let's start with the fighters, and I really like this scene. I think it did a good job of capturing just how deadly and fast space combat should be in Star Wars, and it really proved that Mando was perhaps right to move from the Razor Crest to something a lot more combat oriented. The pirates he's faced off against have not yet been portrayed as very competent or effective, and this holds when it comes to space combat, and I think their starfighters probably reflect this. In Star Wars, pirate groups are often armed by buying ships from the black market, and often the vessels that go up for sale are surplus fighters created often for planetary defense forces. These aren't, especially in the Imperial era, the high-end, perfectly manufactured combat starfighters of the Alliance or especially the Empire. Rather, these are often older vessels, which are usually limited somehow due to cost measures. The thing is, I think we actually know what ship this is, and I think it'll be confirmed whenever we get an episode guide for the Mando Season 3. I think this is New Canon's take on the R-41 Star Chaser. There are some slight differences in terms of visual design, but we see a prominent diamond-shaped forward fuselage, short and stubby rear wings, plus a combination of light weapons and not a lot in terms of shield and hull. So I'm going to assume it's the Star Chaser, talk about that ship. It's possible I'm wrong, but just know what these pirates are operating with is probably in a similar ballpark. In Star Wars Legends, the Star Chaser is, according to the Stay on Target sourcebook, and I quote, solidly built, reliable multi-role starfighter, which had a number of real or perceived problems, limiting its broader appeal. The Star Chaser dates back to the beginning of the Clone Wars, with Hirsch Kessel most likely putting out prior iterations long before that. It was seen as a direct competitor to the Z95, the latter of which would end up being the more successful of the era. Although Star Chasers were, as I said, solidly built, they were seen as death traps. The ship had a real focus on straight ahead speed. Because of design decisions made in that regard, Star Chasers had very light shields and were, and I quote, exceptionally fragile. The ships ultimately didn't see a whole lot of use during the Clone Wars, and by the time of the Imperial era, they were out of date, so they didn't see much use by planetary governments or by legitimate actors. However, they would sometimes make their way into the hands of pirate groups or the Rebel Alliance. This general description is certainly in line with Mando easily outmaneuvering and destroying an entire half squadron of pilots. I think the Death Trap moniker is fairly accurate, and the R-41 Star Chaser is definitely not a fighter I would want to fly. I never really understood why any fighter would focus so heavily on straight line speed to the exclusion of maneuverability. The latter seems far more useful than the former. But when you work for Gorion Shard's pirate game, you're probably somewhat limited in terms of options. Now, let's talk about Gorion's flagship. A lot of people have pointed out that this bears some similarity to, say, the Eclipse or something like a Crusader-class corvette, and there's definitely the similarities design-wise. It's got that prominent prow. Obviously, though, this is much smaller. For perspective, look at the little ball turrets that come out. These are similar in design to the ones on the Star Fortress. So yeah, if you're gonna talk ship classifications, this is like a corvette or a very heavily modified freighter. Maybe 1 to 200 meters, I'm not sure. I really like the design though. The turrets coming out of the hull may be a little too on the nose for a pirate ship. It's like an old sailing vessel opening up its gun ports, but I really like the look of like the hyper-reactive, super mobile turreted guns. This thing looks like it would be an absolute menace to starfighters. Interestingly, the bridge definitely had a pretty Imperial look to me. I wonder about the origins of this ship, whether Gorion stole it from the Empire or whether it was just a civilian ship that he modified to be more scary looking. I think it's a really cool enemy vessel, and I'm looking forward to seeing it throughout the show. It'll definitely appear again. We've seen it in trailers. There are some other cool details though. Instead of transparent steel windows, the ship uses a form of ray shielding. You can see that this shielding extends not only across the ship's bridge, which by the way is the perfect size for a late season Mando concussion missile, but also over the ship's body. We don't get a great look at this in the actual show. However, during the credits we see some art for the ship, and specifically that it looks like starfighters launch from a small shield protected hangar, which is a detail that I really like. The concept art also gives the vessel some absolutely massive cannons, which I think contributes to the vessel having a scrapped together look, which I like. like, but I'm glad they didn't go too overboard. But that's all I've got. I've definitely say parts of the episode definitely felt like the Mandalorian was facing off against some starfighter villains, especially this screen cap right here. Overall, though, some cool designs, and I'm really excited to see how space combat plays into the rest of the season. But do you want me to continue these videos, or do you find them boring? Let me know all of that and more, please, down below.